So here we are on Super Bowl Sunday with our home team. It's happened Tampa Bay Buccaneers playing in the big game, right? Times are changing, aren't they? Right? I say all of that because there are a lot of people that watched the video of our lesson and they might not understand why I'm all decked out like I am. So let me just explain. That's why I am a Bucs fan today. But a good minister is able to take whatever is going on in life and make a spiritual lesson out of it, right? That's the challenge. So I'm going to hopefully rise to that challenge today. I'm going to sprinkle my talk today with some quotes from some big football players and coaches. And here's the first one by one of the most famous players of all time, Joe Namath. He says, "Football is an honest game. It's true to life. It's a game about sharing. Football is a team game, and so is life. Life is a team game." That's a very important truth to remember, right? So actually there are many spiritual things that can be learned from the world of sports, including football. If you look at a football game as analogous to life itself, there are some lessons available in it for us. So let's see what we can find in there, even if we're not football fans. But I can start right there. You know, how engaged in the game of life are you? You know, what kind of a fan are you? You know, there are different levels of engagement with the game of football as fans, right? There are also different levels of engagement with the game of life. And each of us gets to decide, you know, where we are on that scale. So let's just look at that for a second. So at the one end of the spectrum, you have people who absolutely detest football, right? They comment on how violent it is and how unfair that the football programs get all the money at a college campus instead of the biology labs, and how it's a silly waste of time for everyone to be watching it, and how expensive the tickets are, or whatever. You know, they can't stand it. They scare their children away from playing it. I'm stepping on some toes this morning. They scare their children away from playing it out of fear of getting hurt or their lack of opportunities to actually become a professional football player, and they kind of roll their eyes when other people are cheering on a football game on the screen nearby. Basically just don't see the value of the game, right? And quite frankly, I can see some of their points. But what if we're talking about life and not football? Because there are also people on the end of the spectrum who seem to detest life. You know, they're fixated on how violent society is, or how the dollars in the world are spent in ways that they're not being focused in the right directions. That trying is a total waste of time. Everything is too expensive and the rules aren't fair, and they kind of scare their children away from playing the game of life too. You know, you're going to get hurt. And they scoff when they observe other people kind of enthusiastically celebrating happiness or success. Basically, they don't see the value of playing the game of life. So they kind of stand back and criticize everyone else who's on the field of life. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have your dedicated fans of football, right? They're season ticket holders, they're die-hard game watchers. You know these people, right? They live for football. They have jerseys and they have game paraphernalia, and I love this, they can remember the scores of big games from years ago, and they know the entire current schedule by season, whether they're home games or away games or whatever, and they plan their lives around that, and they go to sports bars when they can't get to the games. They know the players by name and number, and they wear their names and numbers, right? They have this phrase of they bleed red and black or blue and green or whatever the colors are. They bleed that, whatever that is. Their identity is defined by their team spirit. And their moods are dictated by the score of the last game, right? They love their team, win or lose. And they tend to hang out with other people who see football that way too. Kind of connect with that. But I love it when you're walking through an airport and someone sees your jersey and they're like, hey, how about those Bucs or whatever, right? You know the fans I'm describing. But guess what? There are people who feel that way about life too. They're fully engaged in every way. They show up fully for all of life, and they dress the part too, right? They're enthusiastic about the players on the field of life, and they have complex relationships with the fellow team members. And they celebrate wins in a major way, and they feel the losses too. They tend to surround themselves with people who love life. So So what's the difference between these two groups? The difference between these two groups is the intensity of spirit. Whether you're talking about football or life, what makes the difference is a spirit for it. Football fans have the spirit of football, and fans of life in general have the spirit of life. Vince Lombardi says, the spirit, the will to win, and the will to excel are the things that endure. These qualities are so much more important than the events that occur. The spirit of it. You know, and he should know a thing or two about winning. He coached the Washington football team, the Packers, and the Giants, and they named the championship trophy in his honor, the Lombardi Trophy. So what does it mean to have spirit? There are many definitions of the word, but the one that fits this moment the best is this one. Spirit is the quality of courage, energy, and determination or assertiveness, a specified emotion or mood. I think that was the spirit that Lombardi was talking about in his quote. See, football fans embrace the game with that courage, energy, and determination. They embody the mood in relationship to the team and the game, win or lose. You know, and people who are fans of life, they embrace life with courage, energy, and determination, and they embody that mood in relationship to whatever's going on in life. Celebration or challenge. It's that internal spirit that makes the difference in both situations. So spirit is the quality of courage, energy, and determination, and those words describe people at the high end of the spectrum. What are the words that we use to describe people with a lack of spirit, or those who are at the other end of the spectrum? I think we would describe them as discouraged, or lacking energy, and uncertain, uninterested, or disengaged. But here's the deal, most of us aren't at either end of the spectrum. We're somewhere in the middle. So let's talk about what it might look like and see if you can find yourself in this middle description. The middle of the spectrum fan of football is usually described as a fair weather fan, right? A person who's supportive and enthusiastic about sports when their team is doing well. Actually, I think Tampa might be really full of a lot of fair weather fans right now as this rapid sale of jerseys and everything is going on, because folks are suddenly interested in football again. So a middle of the spectrum fan is kind of waxing and waning with their interest in the game. They might know big players' names and some basic knowledge of the sport and team, but not the details. You know, sometimes these kinds of fans, and I have to admit I'm one of these kinds of fans, I go to the game for the hot dogs, right? Or maybe the cheerleading or the beads, right? And these beads were, by the way, were thrown at me by a pirate at the game, so I love them. But at any rate, they don't really watch the game. They're happy to go to the Super Bowl party, but they can't remember the score the next day, right? So raise your hand if that sounds like you. Don't leave me out. Okay? Yeah. But what about being in the middle of the spectrum when it comes to life itself? Are you a fair weather fan of life? Because if you fall into this group, you might be enthusiastic and engaged when your life is going well and things are kind of going good as expected, but you're easily discouraged and confused when something changes unexpectedly. You might see your determination to stay engaged just kind of rise and fall with the external factors as they change from one direction to another. You know, there might be some mild interest in understanding how life works, but a lack of willingness to really look at much too deeply. Because once you get disappointed in parts of life, you can just feel your determination just go right out the door. Some seasons you show up, some seasons you don't. So what does it take to move from the middle of the spectrum to the more engaged level? And to be honest, I don't really care how engaged you are with the sport of football, to be honest. Whether you have a jersey or team colors on this morning or not, it doesn't really matter. But I do care about your level of engagement with life. I want you to move from being a fair weather fan of life to an all-out crazy fanatic about your life. So again, what does it take to move someone? I think it goes back to the word, spirit. It really does. If the word spirit is synonymous with words like energy and love and peace and power and connection with something bigger, I believe that is what it takes to become more fully vibrant on the field of life. It takes choosing to connect with your highest self your highest self. That internal spirit, which is a part of the universal spirit. It's an internal choice. But once that choice is made, you're soon surrounded by other people who make the same choice. And that leads to greater success on the field of the game of life. So let's talk about success. To weigh in on that, I want to share a quote by the famous Bears coach, Mike Ditka. He says, "Success isn't measured by money or power or social rank. Success is measured by your discipline and inner peace." It takes discipline and inner peace to make the choice over and over again, to look at everything that happens on the field of life and look at it as it's part of a bigger picture. Every challenge is just one play in the whole game. Every touchdown is just one play in the whole game. And with that awareness, we kind of slip out of the stands and onto the field. Because the truth is, we are both fans of the game of life and we're also players in the game of life. And Brene Brown, in her book, Daring Greatly, talks a lot about the difference between being on the field and being up on the stands in the arena, criticizing other players playing the game. And she builds her book around this quote by Teddy Roosevelt. It's too long to put on the slide. It says this: "It is not the critic that counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." Theodore Roosevelt spoke that in France in April of 1910. So often we become tempted to just sit life out up in the stands, just commenting on how everyone else is playing the game, how folks are coaching the game, how the decisions on the field are being made. It's easy to stay far out of the moment-by-moment decision making, the second-by-second choices to either tackle or run, right? The immediate choice to throw the ball or tuck it and fall on it. We can all criticize those people who are living life. I think they call it armchair quarterbacking, right? See, all of those little and big decisions require vulnerability and risk, and it's so much easier to criticize others and how they are doing it, and how those things that they are doing are either good or bad. But when we choose a life that is based on the spiritual truth of who we are, really are, these divine beings that we are, having a human experience, we're inspired to actually take the field and play. We're inspired to dare greatly. You know, we set our intentions, we know what our goals are, we face every challenge with an understanding that in all of them, we have a choice of how to respond and rise to the challenge. And guess what we do? We surrender the final outcome to Spirit, to the wisdom of our souls. We're focused on our own game, and we ignore the critics up in the stands. It doesn't matter. We're learning the rules of life and the principles of life. And we're getting better and better at playing them and applying them every day. We understand what Coach Sean Payton told his Saints team. To do things you've never done before, you have to do things you've never done before. And when we know we are supported spiritually, we are willing to do things we have never done before in the game of life. And sometimes I think the most important part of being in a spiritual community like this is to be able to look around at others who are also suited up to play life big. You know, those who gather in the huddle like this to remind ourselves each week of the light in each other's eyes, right? On any given day, you might have an amazing victory story to share in the huddle, and other times you may have the need for encouragement. But here we're all going in the same direction as we evolve and become better and better players. We need each other, and we know that we do. You know, coaches talk sometimes about seasons being growing seasons, and some are championship seasons, right? You know, I've only been in Tampa for 3 football seasons. And I must say, the 2 seasons prior to this one have been hard ones. I remember our former president of the board told me during our first football season here, she said, watch carefully. You will notice how the Buccaneers find a creative way to lose every game, right? And now here we are, we're celebrating our appearance in tonight's Super Bowl. The team's worked hard this year. They have embraced new leadership. They have acquired new talents, and they've retrained and refined their old talents. But most importantly, they did not quit playing in the hard seasons. It's easy to quit. It's easy to quit when the going gets tough, right? Tom Landry, who coached the Cowboys through thick and thin, said, a champion is simply someone who did not give up when they wanted to. And as we play the game of life around here, we also know there's always going to be seasons. You know, some seasons are surrounded with all the elements that have us win easily and achieve our dreams. And some seasons are just not so easy. And in those more difficult seasons, we know it is time to regroup and study our choices and the impact of those choices. In those difficult seasons, it's important to practice greater self-care and love. We might have to bring in new coaches. We might need to develop new talents. We might need to learn to refine our skills and celebrate the small wins. But the most important decision we make time and time again is to just keep suiting up for the game of life, knowing that this too shall pass and the next season will come. Lou Holtz, the famed college and professional football coach, reminds us, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. Life is always going to give you opportunities, always. The question becomes, how do you accept the opportunities and respond to them? So I found this inspiring story. I know you guys like stories. I found an inspiring story from a high school JV football coach. His name was Joe Morelli, and this is what he wrote. Everyone should bond as a team. The sum of the parts is greater than the parts themselves. Bond to understand the definition of commitment. Bond to understand the concept of not giving up. Every high school is full of kids who can learn the team's offense and defense plays, but few teams have kids who are committed to the program, so forming a team relationship and having the attitude of never quitting no matter what the circumstance dictates. This year was a special year for the JV football team. I had a great group of kids who really came together as a team. And part of the reason was due to one individual kid named Austin Head. He's a running back. He's listed as 5 feet tall, 100 pounds. By far, he is our smallest guy. He's a running back. He never missed a practice, never talked back to the coaches, never asked about playing time. Austin was 3rd string, so he wouldn't get much playing time, and he knew it. But he loved football so much that if he could only play by coming to practice, then that's what he would do. He knew he was too small to really play, but he told me he didn't want to have any preferential treatment because of his size, so he treated him like any other player. Since he was a 3rd string running back, that meant he had to run the ball against the 1st string defense in practice. So he never hesitated to run right at those stronger players, even against my recommendation. I told him to dive on the ground and avoid being hit because I was afraid he would get hurt, but not Austin. He would consistently run straight at the guys who were like 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, nearly twice his size. And our defense would feel bad after some plays, but Austin would just get up and shake it off and walk back to the huddle and continue on. And most practice drills involved tackling the other running backs, and he would jump in front of the other guys and call out the bigger varsity players. And quickly the varsity guys were asking me, who is this guy? Who is he? He never really got the best of them. Quite the contrary, they usually got the best of him badly. I couldn't believe his resolve and was inspired by his love of the game. So during the season, I made sure to play everyone, each game, at least one play. So Austin did not get much playing time, to say the least. He maybe got a couple of plays at most, but it didn't matter to him. He got his fun during practice. So our last game of the year pitted us against our arch rival. We had many players injured, so they couldn't play. So in our pregame meeting, I declared Austin our team captain for the day in order to kind of inspire the team. And that got the team really pumped up. Then I learned 1 hour before the game, our starting running back could not play due to an injury. Now, I needed to name a starting running back. So we went through our pregame walkthrough and I inserted Austin into the starting lineup. The entire team got fired up. Austin could not believe that he was not only going to actually play in a game, he would start. So in the first play of the game, our players get tackled very hard by the opposing team. And the next play, the same result. It's obvious to me and the rest of my coaches that we were too small and slow to keep up with the opposing team. We were in for a long night. But the third play changed the game. We scored a touchdown on this long run, and Austin played the entire game, catching passes, carrying the ball, blocking for our other running backs, and even scoring his first ever touchdown. We won the game 46-6. After the game, I spoke to the opposing coach. He could not believe his team lost their worst of the season, and I could not believe we won our best game of the season. It was truly a magical game, and I truly believe it had mostly to do with Austin inspiring our team. Every time he caught a pass or ran the ball, our team gave it a little extra. The bottom line is that Austin Head loves the game of football. This love is what drove him to survive every practice, each drill, each hit. The love is what made him successful in his only real action during a game. His love taught me. He inspired all of us during our last game and touched me forever. Austin may have played his last game at the high school level because of his desire, commitment, and team play. He will always remember scoring that touchdown and winning his last game. I know he is prepared to successfully continue his life after football and continue to strive for his dreams. Coach Joe Morelli. The bottom line is the same for us as it was for Austin. We've got to love the game of life. We just have to. We've got to let this love of life inspire us and inspire each other for that matter. We must love life enough to survive every season, every challenge, every tackle, every missed field goal, every fumble, and every fellow team member that irritates us, right? We've got to let the spirit of the game inspire us to always live life to the fullest, getting very dirty and daring greatly. And I'll close with the last quote from Vince Lombardi, and he said it perfectly. After the cheers have died down and the stadium is empty, after the headlines have been written, and after you're back in the quiet of your room and the championship ring has been placed on the dresser and all the pomp and fanfare has faded, the enduring things that are left are the dedication to excellence, the dedication to victory, and the dedication to doing with our lives the very best we can to make the world a better place in which to live. And will you join me in our one-sentence affirmation? Our one-sentence affirmation is Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.